My name is Charlene Culbertson, and I will be presenting Chapter 12, The Language Domain, out of our textbook, Developmentally Appropriate Curriculum, Best Practices in Early Childhood Education, composed by 4 wonderfully smart human beings. With the language domain, there's quite a lot that kind of goes into it, a lot of research, but then there's also a lot of unexplained things because the human brain is indeed a wonderful tool. Yet, the learning outcomes for the chapter are as follows. After reading the chapter, you will be able to explain how oral language develops in young children, describe the connection between oral language and emergent literacy, create a balanced literacy program, implement developmentally appropriate curriculum and instructions in the language domain. So right off the bat, we know that in infancy, children become increasingly sensitive to sound, rhythm, and annotation of language around them. That is why it is very important for people, we have a visitor, very important for babies to be spoken to expose them to as much language as possible, whether it's through reading a book, just talking to them about anything, and also playing music for them. The speed of language acquisition in young children and how they pick up vocabulary and syntax is one of nature's marvels and strong evidence of a biological basis. However, the eventual quantity and quality of the child's language development depend on exposure and stimulation. Again, that goes back. How often are they being presented with the language? Are they getting music played around them? Are they being spoken to? Do they have siblings they can interact with? How are they exposed to the language? The more stimulus they have, the more likely they're going to develop a stronger connection to language. There are multiple different stages at certain ages that the language development should be at. From birth to 1 year is the earliest stages of language development. Experiments and plays with sounds. They cry to communicate discomfort, gurgles, coos, and babbles. They understand familiar names such as those of family members and pets. They will say their first word during this time, demonstrate some one-word utterances for liquids or foods, and appears to listen to conversations, and they will laugh. When they become 1 year to 2 years old, they are increasing utterances with adult annotations that are not necessarily understandable. They have receptive language is far greater than expressive language, Telegraphic speech, noun and verb, is in correct order, want milk, for example, pronounces about 80% of English phonemes and has 9 to 20 words, shakes head to indicate no, and begins to use the word me. Can you see how it's developing? It is going from sounds to coherent sentences. Yes, they're not complete sentences, but they're in order. Want milk instead of meh, for example. Then about years 3 and 5, the vocabulary of about 1,000 words expands dramatically. They understand and apply syntax structures with overgeneralizations of pluralizing irregular verbs. There is acquisition of all basic elements of adult language by 4 and development of private speech. Phonological awareness, the understanding that language can be broken down to smaller units and manipulated, is during this time. And everything just continues to develop. By age 7 and beyond, the general characteristics of oral language are as follows. Grammar is almost equivalent to adults, enjoys talking about what he or she does. Language development continues at rapid pace. Continued vocabulary development and application of language to literacy. To keep up and be able to read and write fluently, children must now learn about 3,000 words per year throughout elementary school. Language development continues on just past the early years. It never stops. Adults even learn new vocabulary and new ways to follow the rules of the language spoken around them. There are, One of the most revealing studies in helping to understand the strong effect of language context is that by Hart and Risley, who documented serious gaps between children growing up with professional parents and those whose parents were receiving public assistance. This is interesting. So it's not just even how they're exposed, but depending on their family situation. We all know that family that is invested in education for the children in the family already have a higher leap than those with absent adults in their life. So, that being said, by age 4, those in higher income families had been exposed to 50 million words as compared to lower income children who were exposed to only about 13 million words. While the result was not surprising, it was more damaging than expected. That means children from more affluent families are going to have a greater understanding and a larger vocabulary base than those who didn't. Personal experience, I was in a preschool classroom and had a child who was using vocabulary I wouldn't have heard from a second grader. She also was able to tell me that her family is composed of mom and dad being a doctor. That is compared to another child in the same classroom who has a parent who works in a retail situation. So, research is amazing, and hands-on experience to see that research is even more, it just makes that connection and makes it so much more real. There are 2 types of vocabulary that children develop as their language develops. Those are receptive vocabulary and expressive vocabulary. Receptive vocabulary is the number of words a child understands. The expressive vocabulary are the words that the child uses to express themselves. There are known red flags in early speech and language development. From infancy, children develop the ability to articulate sounds with p and b being the earliest, and others, such as and o, taking as long as 6 years of age to fully develop. So, there are benchmarks that children should be reaching at certain ages. That was stated in our table on page 364. Children should have reached certain milestones, and if they haven't, that is cause for concern, and a red flag goes up, and it's something that should be focused on and kept an eye to. So that's when you'd want to set up observations and start recording these things to kind of work towards having to help the situation. So it should be able to be caught quickly, and the quicker it is, the easier it is to remedy the issue. There are critical components of the language domain that must be built include the following: listening, paying attention to communication that is heard; speaking, developing an adequate vocabulary and primary language structure to communicate needs and ideas to others; reading, making meaning from text through the use of prior knowledge, semantics, syntax, visual, oral, and tactile clues; writing, gaining understanding of an alphabet system to communicate with others across time and space; and the last one, viewing, paying attention to viewing, which is paying attention to communication that is visually represented, including that which is generated by all forms of technology. All of these components must be made meaningful and useful to children if they are to become fully literate. That being said, I want to focus on must be made meaningful. If a child is not able to make a connection to a learning opportunity, it's going to be easily forgotten. The child needs to have a hands-on activity. Yes, you can do hands-on with an oral activity. They need to have visuals. They need to be exposed to all of these things in order to be successful with their literacy. You need to connect the oral literacy, connecting the oral language and emerging literacy. So, that means we need to take a moment to reflect. It says, can you remember learning to read and write? What specific memories and mental pictures are you immediately aware of related to the process? I can personally think of a time that I have always been surrounded by books. I was always read to. I remember all the way to 4th grade and before that, my teachers always sat and read to us. They always had visuals. I love seeing bright colors and acting in the puppets. I remember always being engaged, always having a book nearby. And that has led to me having a high vocabulary, and I went through school very strong reader and able to search and do things on my own. However, if that's not the case, we know that lack of literacy exposure will turn into a lack of oral language, and it just it builds up, and there are issues that present themselves. Hence the red flags, and it just all builds together and it all works together. You can't skip a step to get into another one faster. You must scaffold with this. So, emerging literacy. Excuse me. So, and it says, many of us think about sitting in a formal reading group at approximately 5 to 6 years of age. A basal text early reader is being used, and individual children in the group are being called on to read brief portions of the text. This teacher is there to correct mistakes and help the reader along. So, I think we can all relate to that. Okay, hi. Now we're going to be connecting oral language and emerging literacy. So before we saw how children progress with their oral language. It does say right off the bat, take a moment to reflect. Can you remember learning to read and write? What specific memories and mental pictures are you immediately aware of related to the process? I immediately think of sitting in front of a teacher, they have a book, I'm reading from a book in front of me that's the same as there. The teacher's there to correct the child if they're reading. I can remember sitting on the carpet just staring at my teacher and reading. So, does that kind of connect with what some of y'all were thinking? Sometimes it says forgotten or discounted are the many other experiences that we had in infancy and early childhood. Hearing and singing songs, listening to stories, seeing pictorial representations, and becoming familiar with letters, words, and other print experiences before we had any formal reading instruction. So we all didn't just jump out and start reading. We had to be exposed to these things and had to have these connections to words and sight and sound. So those of us who reached the upper limits of early language development were fortunate to have had many of the following rich literary experiences. Leafing through cardboard pictures books as an infant, watching television programs such as Sesame Street, playing school with other children, drawing pictures and scribbling with chalk on the sidewalk, excitedly pointing out a place to eat because we knew the name started with an M or a B, reading comic books, rhyming silly words. Are you having a little bit more thoughts and memories when those are said? All of those experiences would serve as critical building blocks in the foundation for literacy development. The importance of phonological and alphabetic awareness. So, as children mature, their preschool and kindergarten experience with language support the growth of phonological awareness. What is that, you ask? This is the understanding that oral language can be divided into smaller components and manipulated. So it is an auditory and oral process that grows in complexity, beginning with a child's ability to hear and then generate rhymes. So, like Jack and Jill went up a hill, and the ability to recognize individual syllables, Caroline growing. With time, they acquired the concept of onset and rhyme. And. See? It's broken down. This leads to the most sophisticated skill or concept at the end of continuum of phonological awareness. That is a phonemic awareness. That requires the understanding that the speech stream consists of a sequence of individual sounds or phonemes, and that we can create new words by taking different pieces of words and putting them together, like p, and, or p, at. We know that P makes the p sound, so we can take that phoneme and add it to others to create new words. There are The literacy terminology, the kind of terms that you will hear on and off, are alphabetic awareness, which is the knowledge of letters of the alphabet and understanding that they can correspond to spoken sounds in the language, and that left to right spellings of printed words represent phonemes from first to last. Alliteration, which means a string of words that that begin with the same sound. So, Sally sold seashells by the seashore. Alliteration. Very tough to say, I must say. Graphemes, which is the letter symbols in the alphabet. So A, B, C, D, all of the letters. Onset and rhyme. Onsets are the beginning sounds of words. Rhymes, R-I-N-E-S, consisting of 37 phonographs beginning with a vowel and share the same spelling endings. For example, at, ak, ing, those endings. Phonemes are the discrete sounds in a language. So p and k and l. Phonemic awareness is awareness that the speech stream consists of a sequence of sounds or phonemes. Phonics, a tool to help make concrete connections between individual graphemes and their associated sounds, and to understand value and consonant patterns. Phonological awareness is the understanding of different ways that oral language can be broken down into smaller components and manipulated. And last is prosody, the music and rhythmic sounds of one's own primary language. So, those are a lot of terms, but they are very, very important to connecting that oral language with emerging literacy. So that way the words collide, seeing words have sound, and that you can produce these. Yeah. So, as children move through the preschool period and into kindergarten, they benefit enormously from activities that teach the following 8 skills. Separate words into syllables or beats, recognizing rhyming words, generating rhyming words, recognize words that start or end with the same sound, generate words that start or end with the same sounds, blend sounds into words, segment words into sounds, and lastly, move sounds around to create new words. So they get to manipulate the language. They get to see what they can create with it. It's very important to scaffold from what the children already have. They need to have a visual. They need to be aware of whole part relations. They should be able to recall images and configuration, the ability to differentiate and discriminate between things, the ability to follow directions, receptive and expressive vocabulary. Okay, so enhancing and scaffolding children's emergent literacy. This just means that the activities that children do have growth opportunities for their oral language and their literacy. Block and puzzle play. Children increase visual eye coordination, awareness of whole part relations, spatial relations, memory to recall sequences. Listening games can enhance memory, build auditory discrimination, increase the ability to attend detail and vocabulary. Watching big books heightens children's awareness of literacy conventions, left to right, top, bottom, page to page, builds vocabulary, increases eye coordination. As children play game with familiar text, they increase sight knowledge of words and gain knowledge of syllables, grapheme, visual discriminations, memory. Their play is more than play. I can't say that enough with early childhood. Play is more than play. They aren't just playing and building blocks. They are honing skills, and that includes their language development. Who knew? Building with blocks can improve your language. Creating a balanced literacy program is very important. Balanced literacy is a perspective that there is no one best way to teach reading and writing. It says successful programs are balanced with a combination of explicit instruction, small group and whole group literacy activities, and independent reading and writing opportunities. Exposure, exposure, exposure. Give it to them as many different ways as possible, as long as it's meaningful. I know even adults want the things that they do to have meaning. Children are no different. They aren't going to want to just sit and stare at someone reading a book. They want to see bright colors and illustrations. They want to color. They want to write the words. There are just so many different activities that you can do to encourage those things. And it's not just with reading. You can include the emergent literacy program with your science, with your math, with your social studies. Even physical education, playing jump rope and saying chants, teddy bear, turn around, teddy bear, touch the ground. Hear the rhythmic way of it talking? Just exposure and the repetition. The more something is repeated, the more likely they are going to grasp it and produce it themselves. What do you do when you have a child who does not speak English as their home language? There are modifications that can be made for it, and there's no need to become nervous or worry that you're not going to be able to help these children. Fear not. There are just a few little things that you can do. 1. Activities help children develop pride and cultural identity to the new language being learned as well as their home languages. Again, make it meaningful. Connect what they are learning to what they already know. They're going to grasp onto it to the comfort of their home language. The classroom activities, again, meaningful and useful to the children. Don't have them say, just color something. How is it meaningful? Is it a cultural picture? Did you just read a book about it? How is it connecting? Activities are designed to elicit, encourage peer interactions. Again, exposure as children and as babies. The more they are exposed to it, the better they are. Same goes for children who do not speak English. The more exposure and having routine with them, they're going to pick up on certain words, and it's going to bridge that gap and allow you to reach them. Teachers carefully sequence activities step by step. Again, keeping to a routine so that they are confident and know what's coming next. And it will take away that stress level. It's just taking those little steps that you might have already implemented. They're going to go a long, long way for these children. And always constantly reassess what's going on. Is the structure working? Is there something better that can be done? That all needs to be taken in consideration. But keep it meaningful. Keep it on task. And these children are going to be totally fine. Expose them just with the language just as much as any other child. That being said, incorporate literacy in everything that you do. Writing, reading, science, social studies, math, it can be used anywhere. It goes on to give very detailed goals to each domain within the language. Put things in print, put words everywhere, let them see books, let them see newspapers, let them have hands-on building the letters, creating a visual rich environment, involve children in these engaging reading experiences, involve them in enjoyable writing experiences, daily opportunities for these things. So very important. Accept children's risk-taking in their listening, speaking, writing, and reading. It's hard learning. Children need to know that they can be brave and that you are a safe place for them, that they can learn from mistakes, that mistakes can just be brushed off. Be encouraging to them. It's a tough time being a kid, but if it's fun and meaningful, it's going to be a breeze. Okay, so that all being said, what I have planned for the language domain lesson is based off of that repetition vocabulary using Brown Bear, What Do You See? By Bill Martin Jr. and Eric Carl. So during this, I will have already read the book to the children so that they are familiar with the rhythm and the words and the, again, repetition of these words. So, I would start by asking the children, what part of the book is this? Front cover, spine, back cover, pages. What does the author do? Writes the words. What's the illustrator do? Draws the pictures. very important for them to have that connection to every single book. It just builds on that knowledge that they can see something similar in everything they do. So I would start holding this up, reading the title. Always point to the words when you read. Brown bear, what do you see? Connects the verbal to the print. I would read this through. Brown bear, what do you see? I see a red bird looking at me. Then I would say, red bird, what do you see? I would stop there and I'd ask those sitting around me, what do you think the red bird's going to see? And they'd say their options, predictions. See, and I'd go, okay, let's see. It says, I see a yellow duck looking at me. It's yellow duck, what do you see? Again, any predictions? Any guesses? All right, let's see if you're right. I see a blue horse looking at me. A blue horse? Has anyone ever seen a blue horse? I know you have. Whoa. Well, now we can all say, look at this. Blue horse, what do you see? I would continue on with this pattern. I would encourage them to be loud in their saying of, what do you see? I see a... And I'd have them try and keep with their repetition pattern. Maybe if they keep a steady rhythm to their selves. Then I would say, okay, we're all going to get an animal. We're all going to become these animals. So you're going to receive one of these character cards. Alright, so you're getting a brown bear, you're getting a black sheep, white dog. Okay, so some of you might have the same ones. But here's what I want you to do. I'm going to read this book again. And when you hear your animal, so which one do you have? Ooh, blue horse. Okay, when you hear blue horse, I want you to stand up and make the sound of a horse. What does a horse say? No! Awesome. All right, so do you think you can do that? Can you make like a fish? What about a frog? A bird? All right, here we go. So again, I would go through this. So green frog. I had to give them time to look at their pictures and words, and for them to stand up, make a few ribbit noises, maybe hop, and okay, let's see what you guys see. I see a purple cat looking at me. Purple cat, what do you see? Meow, meow, meow. Give them opportunity to act like a little cat. What do you see? I would just continue on with this until everyone gets the opportunity to act like an animal from this book. And when it gets to children, I would say, Children, what do you see? Have them all stand up, and then we would all act like all of our animals. So I just wanted it to be fun, jump up, act like these animals, and just have fun with it. After our reading and I collect these or have a helper collect all of them, I would laminate these before. They would go to the tables, and out would be crayons and these little coloring books. And these books have the animals, and all it says is a brown bear. The children would need to connect the brown, and these are in color, so it might be a little pricey, brown bear. They would find this color brown, color the bear brown, and continue on with a black sheep. Color this black. So that way they have this connection. A green frog. They'll get to have the color, create it themselves, and see green and green. Make the connection to what they see and what they read. Frog, what they see and what they read. Having those connections. Afterwards, I would encourage them, they can add these books to our class library. I want them to maybe read or try to read to a friend, to a teacher. That way they just get their own little version of this famous little book here. Alright, well, that is all I have for you. I hope that it was informative to you. Hope you enjoyed the lesson. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.